Back in the day, if you wanted a cheap tuck and roll upholstery job, south of the border was the place. Today, we'll show you a cheater version you can craft for your own rod. Plus, we're back on the C10 where little things mean a lot.
Welcome to Truck Tech. We're pumped to finally get a day to finish up some details on our patina C10 project as we get a little bit closer to getting this baby back on the road.
You know, we have a lot of exterior dress up yet to do because we have no grille, no bumper, headlights, marker lights. We don't even have any glass in this thing. So there's a long way to go to get this thing roadworthy again.
And for you guys that love to hang out in your garage or your man cave, we've got something a little bit different to show you today.
I'd say a lot of it different.
Yeah.
But first, let's get started on the front of this thing and make it look like a 71 C10 again. What do you say? We do have all of our original C10 parts kicking around from when we tore it down last fall. But take a look at these bumpers. The chrome is starting to pit, they're dented, they're twisted, and they just aren't going to cut it for us. Yeah, we are going for a patina style truck, but we want it to have just a little bit of class. So we started over and gave our truck a little bit of bling, and that begins out front with its new grille shell. It comes preloaded with this billet insert that gives it just a little bit of a custom touch without being too over the top. We then grabbed a pair of new chrome bumpers. Yeah, we could have had our original ones straightened out, restored, and re-chromed, but it's really not worth the expense on a driver like the truck that we're building. All it took was one phone call to Brothers Trucks, and we got all the parts that you see here. Next, we grabbed some of their new LED lights. These things will be brighter and a lot more reliable than the old incandescent style. Not only that, the new lenses look 100 times better than the 45-year-old originals. And our installation starts up front with some new headlight buckets. Start with the plastic thread adapters and slide in the spring. Thread in each of the screws about halfway, then slide in the bucket and attach the spring. The headlight is held in with a new retaining ring. In order to support the grille, we need to install the hood latch and support bracket. Then, the new grille can be installed, followed by the headlight bezels. Well, the next thing to go on would be the new front bumper, but these stock brackets, they're just not going to cut it, so we need to make a quick stop at the blaster. Whether you use a blast cabinet like this one or sandpaper and a wire brush, the goal is all the same. Remove as much rust as you can to give the paint a good surface to stick to. With the paint dry, the two upper brackets are first installed onto the bumper. Then, the whole thing is set onto the frame and tightened down. Out back, the bumper brackets are first to go on, which have also been prepped and painted. Then the license plate box gets bolted on. You know, it's amazing what a huge difference the small details can make on your project. I mean, a brand new chrome bumper is nice, but if it's bolted to rusty brackets, well, that just kind of ruins it for you. There's nothing worse than going to a car show and looking underneath a freshly painted vehicle and seeing rust and dirt. It takes a little bit more time, but in the end, you'll have a much nicer finished product. With the bolts trimmed to length, we'll install the bumper and tighten it all down. LED lights have recently become mainstream. Now, I've painted these black because we're using an LED, but if you're using an incandescent bulb, this needs to be painted silver or white so the light has some more reflection to make it a little bit brighter. The reason why is these LEDs have their own reflector built inside. Many new vehicles leave the factory these days equipped with LEDs, and advantages are many. Light-emitting diodes are brighter over conventional bulbs. They consume a lot less power and have a longer lifespan. Plus, they give our 45-year-old truck a much-needed modern touch. Now, you may be looking at this wondering, did I wire that in backwards? No, actually on these LEDs, the black wire is actually the power wire, and the white wire is the ground. With the grounds properly attached, the light can sit in its new home. Well, in just a couple hours' time, we were able to completely transform the outside of our C10, and it didn't even cost that much money. I mean, think about it. We've got two new chrome bumpers, a new grille, and a few lights. Plus, we saved even more money by cleaning up and repainting all of our old brackets. Now, the last detail that's going to finish off the outside of this truck is the chrome trim that goes around the taillight. But ours is stuck in the mail, so we'll throw it on when it shows up.
Next, turning a tired bench seat into a cool couch for your man cave.
We're back on Truck Tech, and I'm really digging our new piece of shop equipment, this Consew 206 RB5 sewing machine. And we've got some cool projects lined up for next season where I can put this thing to good use, creating some cool custom upholstery. But that got me to thinking. Earlier this season, Mark Chris from the Detroit Muscle Show got creative with an old small block Chevy that had been laying around their shop. He stripped it down, cleaned it up, slapped on a little paint, and built an engine block coffee table that sits in our front office, next to a boring black Corinthian leather couch. So I thought, what can we do to add to that vibe to give the lobby a little bit more of a hot rod feel? Well, we could throw some custom paint on the walls, maybe even build a cool sign to hang on the wall, but then it hit me. How about a unique couch made from something out of the junkyard? Actually, we picked up this front bench seat out of a '49 Cadillac Fleetwood. We're going to turn this thing into a couch. Now, I'm going to tell you, it is huge. You could easily fit 3 people on this thing. And the plans I have for it, I'm thinking a red vinyl up top and along the facing of the cushion. And for the inserts, we'll do a white vinyl and something cool like tuck and roll. Now, since the lower cushion is solid and it doesn't have this upper strip, I think we'll add a 4 or 5 inch red strip in here that goes into the tuck and roll and make it match a little better. But we'll get started with a cushion. The first thing we need to do before tearing the seat down is very important. I'm going to find the center of the cushion, then make lines about 6 inches apart where each piece of material is sewn together. The lines are where we will make our witness marks, which are references used to sew our new material back to its proper location. If we didn't make these marks, I'd struggle to get all the pieces lined back up. Now I'm going to measure and mark for the red vinyl insert. This will be my cut line. Next is to remove the seat cover, typically held down with hog rings. You can cut them off with a pair of wire cutters or shears. With the cover off the seat, now it's time to separate all the pieces with a razor blade. Now this can be a little time consuming, but this is a good test of patience. You don't want to just tear it apart and ruin the material. Destroying the material means your template will be cattywampus. Not a good thing. All right, since our cover is so torn up and I want to try to keep it together as good as I can for a template, I'm just going to tape over some of these spots, try to hold it together. Now I can make my cut to separate the 2 pieces. Remember, the piece on the left will be flat red vinyl. On the right, our white tuck and roll. All right, this is our insert that's going to get tuck and roll. And this is what tuck and roll looks like. It looks really cool because all of the stitches are hidden. Now, I call each one of these channels, and our insert, I get about 40 of them. Now, when you sew tuck and roll, it tends to shrink a lot. So for every 4 channels, we're gonna lose about 1 inch. So I'm gonna cut my material way bigger than it needs to be. And once we get it all sewn up, we can come back, lay our insert over the top of our tuck and roll, trace it out, we're good to go. First, I can cut out the white vinyl and get it to a manageable size. Then the same with the scrim foam. 2 coats of 3M trim adhesive on both sides will hold it together nicely. Now we can lay out the lines to sew the pleats, starting with the absolute center. I'll make my marks 2 inches wide, which happens to be the width of my ruler. Over to the machine, I can begin laying down stitches. All I'm doing is making a top stitch on the material following each of my lines I just marked. These lines of stitches will end up being our guides for the next step. After about an hour or so running a stitch on all the pleats, I can start with the actual stitch that provides the tuck and roll effect. It starts by folding the material right where the stitch lines are, and I'm sewing a 1/4 inch to the inside all the way down the material. More patience in play here. These are the actual stitches your butt will rest on, so they better be straight. All right, now you can see what our finished product is going to look like. Now the technique I'm using here, a lot of people call this cheater tuck and roll, because it's a little bit different from the traditional tuck and roll they did back in the day. Back then, they would take leather or vinyl material, sew it to another fabric backing. This would leave the channels open. They would then stuff each individual channel with cotton. Now, that takes a lot of time to do, so doing it this way is much more efficient. And if you put the two side by side, you can't tell a difference, so I definitely prefer this way. Once the last channel is sewn, I can move on to the next step. With the old insert laid down on the new piece, I'll transfer my alignment marks. Then cut it to size. These witness marks are made on the outer edge of the tuck and won't be seen, but they will help me line everything up. Moving on to the front panel, I'll lay out the old piece and transfer it over to the red. The process is the same here, transferring marks to help line everything up. An extra ½ inch to the top for seam allowance will give us plenty of material to sew to when we stitch the two pieces back together. At the machine, I'm running a border stitch right along the edge of the material just to lock the foam and vinyl together. Now this stitch will never be seen, and we can follow the same steps for the facing material. We're back on Truck Tech, resurrecting and converting this original '49 Cadillac bench seat into a nice tuck and rolled couch for our front lobby. The assembly of our pieces is pretty simple. I'm sewing the two inserts together, laying them face to face, making sure to keep the edges even. And I've lined up the stitch a ½ inch in on all the pieces. Now this ½ inch is referred to as seam allowance. Now, don't get me wrong, upholstery is definitely a learned skill, but it's something that anyone can do with a little practice and a decent sewing machine. Oh, and don't forget patience. Most folks are intimidated by sewing machines, but in my opinion, running the machine is probably the easiest part of the job. Buy a good used machine, get some material, and go to town. Now the web is a great resource for how-to videos, along with our show, of course. Tuck and roll looks pretty cool. Oh, one down, one to go.
One of the more important systems that we haven't installed in our C10 yet is the steering column. And there's two main reasons why I'm not going to put this one back in our truck. First of all, it was originally a column shift, and there's a lot of stuff here that we just don't need anymore. Now that's really not a deal breaker, but this is. The bearing at the bottom is completely shot, and that's a safety concern which we don't want to mess around with. So we went to LMC Truck and we're going to completely start over with this new black steering column. And right away it looks a lot better because it's for a floor shift truck, so there's no ugly bumps on the side. We also grabbed everything we'll need to complete our installation, like this black billet aluminum and leather steering wheel, all the adapters we'll need, as well as this new steering shaft with joints at either end. So we'll have tight, precise steering and we won't have any safety concerns. Our installation starts right away by sliding the column down into the hole and lining up the retaining strap. Down near the firewall, I'll slide in the rubber grommet and screw in the bracket. In the engine bay, the lower column bracket goes into place with a couple bolts. Back inside, it's time to install the steering wheel. I cheated and already lined up the steering shaft with the wheels pointing straight. But if your steering wheel is crooked when driving down the road, there are infinite adjustments with this type of splined adapter, so it's easy to correct later on. Back under the hood, slide the universal joint onto the column, then the rag joint onto the steering box. I already drilled pockets for the set screws to engage, and with everything lined up, apply Loctite to each set screw. You really don't want any of your hardware on your steering system loosening up.
I went ahead and progressed the project. I've sewn the backrest together and everything's coming together pretty nicely. But there's one thing I still needed to add, and that's what we call a listing. It's basically one piece of material that's folded over and sewn together. It gives me a channel to run a piece of rod through. Now what this allows you to do is put a hog ring in, and it really bites down on it, and you don't have to worry about your hog ring ripping through the material if you didn't have a rod. You'd sit down, you'd rip it, it'd just be a big mess. But before we get to that, there's something pretty cool I want to show you. This is actually the original seat cover that came out of the '49 Cadillac. And normally we'd rip this off and we'd refoam it and all that good stuff, but man, since it survived this long, we'll just leave it for the next guy. This seat cover and many covers from back in the day were hog ringed in. So we're going to use that same process. Hog ring fasteners have been around forever. They're really cheap and you can get them and these specialty pliers at pretty much any hardware store. This pair from Matco Tools are spring loaded, so when you open them up and put a hog ring in, they clamp down on it and hold it in place. They make attaching fabric to a frame super simple. Looks good. I really like that. It's a cool look. What do you think, LT?
It looks pretty sweet.
I like it a lot.
Next, the finished product.
Hey man, how's it look back there? I know we did some pretty careful measurements. Does it fit with the truck all laid out?
Yeah, man, it fits nice. No rubbing issues anywhere. Wheel looks really good. I really think it's gonna suit the stance of the truck. Now, a while ago, we showed you guys these wheels. They're a 20-inch Billet Rallye wheel that we picked up from Summit Racing, and we wrapped them in Continental Extreme Contact DWS 06s. Now, out back, we went with a 275, and up front, we went with a 245. They are a great all-around tire, and will even do great on the racetrack, which is where we intend to take this truck once we get it all wrapped up.
Let her down. Today, the outside of our C10 looks a lot more complete with new bumpers, lighting, and that new grille. But my favorite part are those 20-inch Rallies. It really gives that truck a unique look. But one thing we haven't installed yet is the glass. So we went to LMC Truck and picked up new windshields, both front and rear. We also grabbed the rubber gasket that actually holds the glass to the frame of the truck. And to make installation a little bit easier, we also picked up a rope tool. We couldn't leave today without turning that crank to hear our LT1 roar. Sounds good.
Look at it. Woo! Yeah, man. That thing is bad, dude.
That is 460 horsepower of American muscle,
man,
breathing through some Borla exhaust. That thing sounds good.
That'll be a good time right there.
I like it. You know, the engine in your truck is essentially a giant air pump. So adding more efficient airflow goes a long way to adding more power. These are Airaid MXP enclosed intake boxes for 15 and 16 F-150s. The performance intake tube is engineered to maintain proper mass airflow sensor calibration, and the high flow air box easily drops into place. The premium reusable air filters are available in either oiled or non-oiled versions, and performance gains are impressive. This 3.5 EcoBoost kit gained an additional 33 horsepower and 35 pounds of torque in dyno testing. More information is available at airaid.com.
Ever wish you had a vise that wasn't permanently tied to your workbench? This is the Wilton 5-inch all-terrain vise. It's lightweight and has an integrated carry handle. Best of all, it's versatile. You can also pick up the optional bench mount that you can use in your garage or on your trailer. And these set screws can be adjusted for a tight fit into your truck's 2-inch hitch receiver to limit vibration while driving. And the patented 360 handle pulls out and locks into any position. Check them out at wiltontools.com. Man, I knew I'd find you sitting down somewhere.
Heck yeah, I got the best seat in the house. You know, this is a pretty cool addition to anybody's man cave or den, and it really wasn't that much work, was it?
No, I mean, this isn't really a beginner project with the tuck and roll, because quite a few hours in that, but I mean, you have a little patience, you can knock it out.
Well, it's a good look, but let's get back to work.
Let's do it. I'll put one of those in my living room.
Yeah, man, your wife would kill you.